Baruch Hashem, today's daf yomi is Avodah Zarah, daf Samachal, Avodah Zarah 61. Today's daf is dedicated for Shemir for the Chayalim, Matzah for the Shvuyim, and Yeshua for Am Yisrael. Daf yomi tells us, Hamatayar Yeno Shel Ove Kochavim, that what happened was the Jew wanted the idolater wanted the Jew to watch his wine. We're on the top of 61a at the top. The idolater wants the Jew to watch his wine. And that way the idolater will be able to sell the wine to the non-Jews. I mean, to the Jews. So he's being mitar yenu shel kuchavim. He's doing it with kashrus to sell it to a Jew, Rashi says. And he's not paying the money to the idolater until he's ready to sell it. So he needs the Jew to basically make sure it's kosher. So Amatari Yenishal of the Kochavim, Vinosno Birashuso. And then what happens is the wine is deposited in the household of the idolater. If it would be Bibayis Hapasuch or Rabim, if it would be in a house that opens up to the public domain, Be'ir Sheyesh Ba'ovdei Kochavim, and it's a city where there are idolaters in this city, then we're going to say under those circumstances that there are both idolaters, the Yisraelim. There are not just idolaters, there are idolaters and Jews in that city. Then we're going to say mutter. Then we're going to say under those circumstances, it's going to be permitted for a Jew to drink that wine because the idolater is going to be concerned and therefore he won't touch it. Rashi says, the mirsaslay or the Khanvo the Amar Dilma Chazli Hanach Yisrael, the Avi Bersha Sarabim, Umafsino. He's worried that maybe the Jews will pass by and it'll cause him to lose money. So therefore, they'll see him touching it. But if it would be the ear Shakua of the Kochavim, it will be a city that's entirely idolaters, Asar. It'll be prohibited, Achi Yeshev Umishamer, unless the Jew will sit there and watch it. And says the Mishnah, the Jew doesn't really need to be sitting there and watching it the entire time. Rather, even if he just comes in and out, it's going to be permitted. Shimon ben Elazar says the domain of the idolaters is one. Where is going to explain this elliptical phrase, this enigmatic phrase of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, and say is it a leniency or stringency? We'll deal with that. Meretz Hashem, Be'ezras Hashem Yisparach on Amud Beis. Continues the Mishnah. Hamatar yeno shel ovdei kochavim v'noten b'rshuso. Now Rashi views this as connected case to the earlier case. But let's say if it's a house that is open to the public domain, Vahoa, and meaning to say, so we are talking about such a case where the house was open to the public domain, and the goy has the wine of the Jew, and the Jew is watching the wine of the goy to make sure that it's kosher. And then under those circumstances, what happens is the no pirishuso. It's in the house of the non-Jew. And the idolater writes to the Jew, I've already received money from you for this wine. Meaning to say, the idolater has no rights to this wine. So therefore, if he's going to touch it, the Jew will see him and he's going to have to pay for it. So that's a problem for the idolater. So therefore, we trust the idolater is not going to touch it. So under those circumstances, mutter. But if the case is that the Jew But if it's the case that the Jew, if he wants to, hold on, but if it will be the case that the Jew will want to take it out, then but if the Jew will want to take it out, the idolater will not let him take it out until the Jew pays him. This was an actual incident in Beit Shan, and it was prohibited. And the reason is, since the idolater will view this wine as like a pledge to him for the money that the Jew owes him, and so therefore he's not afraid, because he says, even if he sees me touch it, I'm not going to lose anything, because when he says, "Give me my money," I'll say it's mine. I have a pledge on you. Okay, Be'ir Shakua Ovde. So now the Gemara says, Be'ir Shakua Ovde Kochavim. Nami, even if it would be a city which was entirely made up of idolaters, it should still be permitted. Not just a city where there was idolaters and Jews, but even if it was entirely idolaters, idolaters should still be afraid that the Jews are passing through. Na'ika Rochlin, Hamachzirim Bayaros, because there are the merchants who are going in and out of the cities, and so therefore it would be permitted. So the Jewish merchants. So the Gemara says, Amar Shmuel, Be'ir sheyesh lo asaimu v'riach. No, the merchants can't go in there all the time. They have a lot of tariffs, trade regulations. They don't allow the merchants in. So therefore, if he knows when they do come in, then the idolater will have a heads up and he won't touch the wine then. Amar Rav Yosef v'chalon kurshas harabim dami v'ashba kurshas harabim dami. If there's a window into the public domain where the Jew could see, or if it was a place like an ashba where people go to put their trash, so therefore everybody is able to see, have sight, then it's also like the public domain, and the idolater and the wine will be kosher. V'dikla kurshas harabim dami. And also a palm tree is like the public domain, because people are always going up to the palm tree to get their fruit, so therefore the idolater will say, under those circumstances, it's going to be, it's permitted. Psik reishe, let's say the top of the palm tree has been chopped off, so meaning to say there are no longer fruits there. So nobody's climbing up the palm tree to get any fruits. That's a dispute between Rav Acha and Ravina. One permits it, one prohibits it. Manda Asar, the one who prohibits it, the one who prohibits it says, because the Jews are not going to go up there, there's no fruits, so therefore you're not going to have any sight over the idolater. Manda Shari, the one who permits it, says, Zimna da'avdele behema, v'sal kuyune batzur. It's a good checkout point. Maybe he lost his animal, he's going to go up there to look for the animal, and so therefore it's going to be, the wine will be permitted because he has a good reason to be up there. Tana Rabbanan. Let's say a person either buys or rents a house in the courtyard of an idolater, and then they filled it up with wine. So basically they have a barrel, and the Jew got a house, either he bought it or he rented it in the courtyard of the idolaters. And so therefore, under those circumstances, he then went and he filled up that house with wine, and the Jew lives in that same courtyard. So mutter, then the wine is going to be permitted. Even though it's not, the wine is not under lock and key. But we'll say, because the guy will be afraid that the Jew will come in, therefore it's going to be permitted. Because since the guy does not have any connections to that wine, he's not going to go over and touch the wine. He's afraid of the Jew who lives there, and he's not going to go into the house. Even though the wine wasn't sealed, the house was not his. He's not going to go in. But let's say the Jew doesn't live in that courtyard. He lives in another courtyard. So if the Jew lives in another courtyard, then we'll still say mutter. It will still be permitted, but that's only if it was under lock and key, and so therefore it was locked up, or there was a seal on the barrel. So since the wine is of the Jew and there's a seal, the guy will be afraid to force the seal, because maybe the Jew will realize it, even though he's in another courtyard. And the next clause of the Brisa says, let's say somebody, the idolater, again, he wants the Jew to give a hashgacha on his wine, and if it was in the house of the guy. Yisrael dar ba'osachatzer, and the Jew lives in that same courtyard. Mutter, it's permitted. As long as the Jew has either the lock to it or the seal on it. Amalei Rabbi Yochanan Latana Tani Afapisha Aim Aftech Chosim Biyado Mutter. No, read it. Even though the Jew does not have the lock and key on that seal, it's going to be permitted. But if it would be in another courtyard, then it's prohibited even though it's under lock and key. The Chachamim say the Chacham say it's prohibited unless there's a shomer there at all times, or a watchman there, or yavo memuna balakitin, or if there's an inspector who comes at a specific time. So first of all, the Gemara says this statement of the Chachamim, and it's prohibited unless there's a shomer who's watching it. Chachamim, ahai, what are they referring to? Ilema seifa. If you want to say that they're referring to the latter clause, the last clause, which is that Rabbi Meir says that if it's in another courtyard, it's prohibited even if the Jew is under lock and key. The Chachamim say it's prohibited unless there's a shomer watching it. So if that's what I say it's prohibited about, that's what the Chachamim are talking about. Tanakama nami meser ka'aser. The Tanakama in that case, the Rabbi Meir is a Tanakama. In that case, he also prohibits it. The Chachamim are not arguing because the Chachamim say it's prohibited unless there's a watch. And Rabbi Meir said it's prohibited even if he has a lock and key. So they're basically saying the same thing. So they're not arguing. So it can't be that it's the last clause. Ella Areisha the Seifa, if you want to say it's on the first clause of the Seifa, which is what Rashi tells us, this is the wine of the idolater in that courtyard of the idolater, and a Jew is living in that same courtyard. The Rameir says it's permitted as long as the Jew has the seal on it. And the Chachamim are now coming to say it's prohibited unless there's a watch. Is that what it's talking about? So if the Seifa, the Reisha, the Reisha, the Seifa, Rabbi Yochanan Latana, Tani Avapisha Maftech V'chosem Biyado. It can't be because Rabbi Yochanan says that it's permitted even in that case where the Jews living in the same courtyard as the wine, even though it's not under lock and key. And so we see from here, it's obvious to Rabbi Yochanan that the law is even more lenient than that range of the Seifa. So it wouldn't be the case that the Chachamim are strict there if Rabbi Yochanan is saying it's more lenient. So it must be. So first of all, the Rabbi Chilmi Paris says, wait, how can the Gemara prove from Rabbi Yochanan's position a question on the the way to read the Brisa? Maybe Rabbi Yochanan is only explaining it according to Rabbi Meir, and he says, no, it can't be the case that because we know Rabbi Yochanan amended the text, and so Rabbi Yochanan said that this amended text must be L'kuli Alma. So therefore we assume that that's the way Rabbi Yochanan is reading. So it must be that what we're talking about is Ella Aseifa the Reisha. You mean the last clause of the first clause of the Mishnah, meaning to say what's the case? Rashi reminds us where it's the wine of the Jew, and we said in the Brisa that the Jew lives in another courtyard. It's permitted as long as he has the seal or the key, because since it's the wine of a Jew, the idolater will be afraid to forge it. Maybe the Jew will recognize it. And there the Chum say, no, you need a watch. So maybe that's what it's talking about. The Kamar Tanakam Chatar Acharat Mutar, Vahusha Maftach Chos, and the other Chamar Amr Olam Atzar Ache Yeshama, Yoshev Mishamer, Ache Mamuna Bal Kitin. So that's the case, the Gemara says. And it's the Chum say it's prohibited unless there's a watchman all the time, or unless there's a person who comes at a specific time. Gemara says, Mamuna Bala Kitzin Kriusahu. Well, if we know exactly when the watchman is coming, the inspector, well, that's not a good thing. That's a bad thing because obviously they can plan. Unless there's a watchman who doesn't come at a known time, that's when we're going to say that it becomes permitted. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, Rishus Ovei Kochavim Achasi. So we had said in our Mishnah that it said that under this case, it said in our Mishnah, if it would be a city that's entirely idolaters, it's prohibited, unless there's a watchman there. And he can just come in and out and it's permitted. Whereas Rabbi Shimon Elazar says, that there's one domain of the idolaters. So Gemara asked the question, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar being lenient or strict? So what's he doing? Rabbi Yehuda Amar Zeiri Lahakel is being lenient. Rabbi Nachman Amar Zeiri Lahakel is being strict. Rabbi Yehuda Amar Zeiri Lahakel says he's being lenient. Hold on. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol b'yado. So Rabbi Yehuda says that Zeiri says he's being lenient. This is how we read it. Tanakama says, Hashem sheber suso asar. Now, the Tanakama is saying just like if it's in the domain of the idolater, it's also if in a different idolater's domain, meaning to say it's not in his own domain, but in a different idolater's domain, his idolater's A's wine is in idolater B's domain, it's still going to be prohibited. We're concerned that they have a relationship, and he said, you do the Yain Nesach for me, and I'll do the Yain Nesach for you when it's in my household. Or as Rabbi Shimon Elazar says, that's when it's his own domain. But if it be in a different idolater, is it be permitted? We're not concerned about the gomen. Whereas Rabbi Nachman says in the name of Zeiri, Amar Zeiri lahachmer strict v'achakam tanakama medvar mamorim b'rishuso. When do we say that it's prohibited? When it's in the domain of the owner of the wine. But if it would be in the domain of a different idolater, it'd be prohibited. Whereas we're not concerned about them showing favors. Whereas Rabbi Shimon Elazar says, every domain of idolater is one and the same. And therefore, the idolater, if it's in the idolater's domain, it's going to be prohibited, even if it's a different idolater. And Tanya Kavasi Rav Nachman, Amar Zeiri Lahachmir. Here we have a brayso that supports this statement that the Rabbi Shimon Elazar is being strict, and that's how the Zeiri is interpreting it. Because Amar Rabbi Shimon Elazar, cautious of the Chavim Achasim if they are our mind, because we don't trust them, so we will view them all as one domain, and so therefore that's exactly what Rav Nachman said. So fine. Debate Parzek Rofila Usivu Chamra Gabe Arisainu. So in the place called Beit Parzak, then there was a very advanced bureaucrat, vice president of the area, and he put the wine by his sharecropper. So Rava thought to say in front of the Rabbanim thought to say in front of Rava that when are we concerned about Gomelin, about mutual favors? Hi, Gabe, hi, where they both would be putting the wine by next to each other. But here, since the sharecropper would not typically put his wine by the vice president of the area, then we're not concerned about mutual reciprocation because it's not that type of relationship. Rava says, no, other Rava, just the opposite. Even according to the position that says we're not concerned about Gomelin. That's only where he's not afraid of him. He's not afraid. But since in this case where the sharecropper is afraid of the of the Rofila, Mechapila is Chutza is going to cover up for him. So for sure in this case, we should be afraid. Last case of the chapter. There was a city where there was the wine of the Jews, and and so there was a wine of a Jew in this city, and the idolater they found an idolater that was standing amongst the wine. So Rava says, if they would catch this guy, be like a thief, then the wine is prohibited. Otherwise, it's going to be permitted. Below also, Rabbi Shmuel. The thing in this line means if the guy is standing there is like a thief, means to say he's worried about getting caught, then he's not going to touch the wine, will be permitted. But otherwise, if he's not worried like a thief, he views himself as like a Baal bias, then the wine will be prohibited. I was thinking that Rabbi Melch said that there are several things we can learn from a thief. And even though he didn't list this is one of the things you can learn from a thief, that a thief has to always be worried about getting caught. And so too, we should have this Yirah Shamayim that we're always worried about Hashem seeing what we're doing and therefore be able to conduct ourselves properly. Okay, we're going to continue. We have a few more minutes. So since I'm not going to be able to do the daf with you live tomorrow, we'll continue for the next few minutes and do the next chapter. Samach Beis. Let me stop the recording.